Today's scripture reading comes to us from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, verses 1 through 14. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of birth. It is better to go to the house of the mourning than to go to the house of feasting. And for this is the end of everyone, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of countenance the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of the mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than to hear the song of fools. For like the crackling of thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of fools. This also is vanity. Surely oppression makes the wise foolish, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning. The patient in spirit are better than the proud in spirit. Do not be quick to anger, for anger lodges in the bosom of fools. Do not say, "Why were the former days better than these?" For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. Wisdom is as good as an inheritance, an advantage to those who see the sun. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom gives life to the one who possesses it. Consider the work of God. Who can make straight what he has made crooked? In the day of prosperity, be joyful, and in the day of adversity, consider. God has made one as well as the other, so that mortals may not find out anything that will come after them. Hear what the Spirit is saying to God's people.
Thanks be to God. And again, just a word of thanks to all who are present in the room for continuing to wear your mask throughout the entire service of worship. Nobody wants to be doing that at this point, and we're not quite ready to have the rule rescinded just yet. So thank you so very much for keeping that on for the entire service. I really appreciate it. So we're in week number 2 of a worship series called Life, Death, and Disney, in which we focus on one movie every week and kind of think about theological themes around life and death. Now, it begs the question, why would we create a worship series based on movies? Why would I preach about movies? It's a fair question. And I want to say first and foremost that movies are not the primary source of sermon preparation. That the primary source of movie preparation is the Bible. Like, it should go without saying, but let's just go ahead and say that anyway. Like, source number 1 is Scripture. However, we have other sources for theological reflection that are a part of our tradition. And one of those sources is what Methodists refer to as experience. Now, what that means, experience means our lived experience of the presence of God in the world. Our direct encounters with the Holy Spirit. Experience is another source for theological work and theological reflection. And along with that is this sort of understanding that God is everywhere, that the Spirit of God is everywhere. Which means that those encounters are possible everywhere, including, dare we say, in a Disney movie. Those moments in which we find the presence of God don't have to be big, grand moments. They can be the everyday, ordinary, smallest moments of our lives. We can find the sacred in the mundane. These individual, small little moments of our lives are filled with holy possibility, and it becomes a matter of training ourselves to recognize it, making sure that our spiritual senses are open to see it. And so we can watch a Disney movie and ask, where is God in this? Who does God call us to be through this particular movie? And in this week, we're going to talk about that via the movie Soul. So, Soul, I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Soul. It's a pretty recent movie. It came out in the year 2020. I don't know how many of you remember the year 2020, since it was 47 years ago. But Soul was set for theatrical release in the summer of 2020. And Disney, instead of releasing it into theaters, thought, well, we've got this COVID thing going on, so let's delay the release of it until the fall. Because surely by the fall of 2020, this will all be So they set a release date in the fall, and of course they did not release it in theaters in the fall either. They pushed it back to December and released it on Christmas Day of 2020, but not in theaters. It went directly to the online platform Disney+, the first Pixar movie ever to not be released in theaters. So even though it didn't get a widespread reception, it won Academy Awards that year. It won 2 Academy Awards, as a matter of fact. The first was for Best Animated Feature, and the second is for the Best Original Score. Now, the story centers on a fellow named Joe Gardner. He's here in this image. He's an aspiring jazz musician. And the central relationship in the movie is a relationship between Joe Gardner and a disembodied soul named 22. 22 is the little tiny soul sitting on the L over there. That's Joe's soul there next to 22, which, spoiler, Joe dies. Just want to say that out loud. And if you're watching a movie called Soul, and if you're listening to a sermon in a series called Life, Death, and Disney, I mean, you should expect someone to die. So I'm sorry if you didn't realize that, but Joe dies in this movie. Joe has lived a life looking for something. He has this thought, this belief, that the meaning in his life will come through playing jazz piano. Like, that's the one thing that will provide his life with any kind of purpose, any kind of meaning. He's looking for his big break, looking for his big gig that will get his name out there. And once he gets to do that, once he gets to play jazz piano for a living, he will realize the meaning of his life. He will discover this meaning in his life, and then he will be happy. And then he will know life as a good thing. But what ends up happening to Joe Gardner is that he spends so much time looking for that one specific thing that he misses the happy moments that are just right there in front of him all along the way in his day-to-day life. It's on the day that he does get his big break that Joe dies. He has a gig in the evening, a gig with Dorothea Williams, this well-known jazz saxophonist, and he's so happy about it, he's so excited about it that he doesn't look where he's going, and he falls down into the sewer grate and dies. It's kind of not, it's really funny, actually. It's kind of comical how that happens. But nevertheless, he dies, and then his soul, the one with the hat, floats up into the beyond, and through a series of plot points that I won't go into detail, he meets this disembodied soul 22. So it's Joe's disembodied soul having lived on earth, and 22, who is a disembodied soul who has never lived on earth. 22 has never received a body. See, when a soul is ready to go and live in the world, they receive what they call a spark. And 22 has not received her spark yet. That spark is the last piece of the development of a soul, that they get their spark when they're ready to live. But 22 doesn't want to live. 22 has no desire to live. 22 believes there's no actual meaning to living that we can't have here in the great before. In fact, 22 is almost disgusted by the thought of living, like going to live in a big meat sack. Ugh, gross. When she's watching Joe live out his sad life and seeing all those moments of happiness that he missed, 22 actually observes, your life is so sad and pathetic, and you're working so hard to get back to it. You see, Joe wants to get back into his body. He's got this gig. He's got this big break. He's got this moment when his life will be infused with meaning, when he will acquire this purpose in his life. And so he wants to get back into his body so that he can experience that, so he can finally know that life is good. And so what had happened was, it's kind of hard to explain. But both Joe Gardner's soul and 22's soul both end up back on earth together. But, see, 22 ended up in Joe Gardner's body. And Joe Gardner ended up, stick with me here, in a cat. It's a long story, and you just have to accept that as given for the rest of the sermon. Joe Gardner is residing in this cat, and 22 is residing in Joe Gardner's body. And this is a disaster for Joe Gardner. He's got to get back into his body. Why? So he can finally have happiness in his life, because he's got to get to this gig. There is one way he's going to acquire happiness in his life, and it's to play this gig with Dorothea Williams on this night, and so he has to get back into his body. But 22 is not particularly anxious to give up this body just yet, because what 22 figures out while she is embodied in Joe's body, she figures out kind of what it feels like to be alive. What it feels like to live in each moment. And she brings her own approach to life with her, in that it's not a big, grand, specific thing that provides life meaning. It's just the simple fact of being alive. Just the simple moments of appreciating the beauty of the world. That one's spark is not one particular thing, it's just a readiness to live. When she's thinking about her spark, she says, well, maybe sky watching is my spark. Maybe walking is my spark. I'm really good at walking. And after she says this, Joe Gardner brushes it aside. He says, no, those really aren't purposes, 22. That's just regular old living. Those really aren't purposes. That's just regular old living. And it's brilliantly written, because when he says that the first time, it's almost brushed off. We almost gloss it over. But that line comes back again twice more in the movie. It's just regular old living, he says. Joe realizes that what he has said, that's just regular old living. He realizes that regular old living is it. That regular old living is all we have, that nothing else is guaranteed. Joe realizes that little moments, like watching the sky, or walking in the park with a friend, or breathing, or looking at a beautiful, beautiful winter blue sky, or eating a piece of pizza, or falling in love, right? That these little moments are all that we have. All of the little moments, by the way, that Joe has missed in his life while he was trying to achieve that one particular thing that he thought was his purpose. He missed all those little things in his life because he was waiting for the big thing in his life. In those small, ordinary occurrences of our lives, we find, if not purpose, then at least enjoyment, happiness. No, the little things in our life are not little. And to try to search for some bigger meaning behind them is ultimately a fruitless endeavor. It's like trying to chase smoke, which is what Ecclesiastes tells us that it is, really. That everything is meaningless. The word that was translated in today's passage is vanity, that everything is vanity. In other translations, it has meaninglessness. Everything is meaningless. It's hard to translate this word. In the Hebrew, the word is hevel. Everything is hevel. It's repeated over and over again throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. All is hevel. And hevel literally means smoke or steam or vapor, right? So you can see it there. It's right in front of you. But when you try to reach out and grab it, not only do you not hold on to it, it actually disappears. It means fleeting, temporary. It means ultimately unknowable. It means enigmatic, paradoxical. Everything is hevel. Everything is vapor. And the key to living, says the book of Ecclesiastes, is to accept hevel, is to accept that all is hevel, to acknowledge that everything in your life is totally out of your control. Whoa, that hits some people, huh? Where are my control people in the room, right? Where's my controllers? I know you're here, right? This is a safe space. Ecclesiastes says everything is out of your control, and the key to happiness, the key to living, is to understand and embrace that. And if you can't control everything, it gives you permission to receive. Not able to control means that we can receive. We can receive the gift of God, the enjoyment of the simple, good things in life. Even though these simple, good things in life are in and of themselves not guaranteed. To think that those good things are guaranteed to us is hevel. It's vapor, it's meaningless. But to understand these simple, good moments as not guaranteed to us actually increases their significance in our lives because it liberates us to truly enjoy them when they arrive. Ecclesiastes says there's nothing better for a human being than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in their toil, to find happiness in our daily lives. We heard a part of Ecclesiastes, the first half of chapter 7, that's characterized as wisdom literature. You heard a series of comparisons. This is better than that. To live like this is better than to live like that. This is a pretty common formula for wisdom literature. Except most of the time in wisdom literature, like the book of Proverbs, for example, you will hear some outcomes as well. To live like this is better than to live like this. And if you live like this, you will prosper. If you live like this, you will earn the favor of your neighbors, right? There is a promised outcome. The teacher in the book of Ecclesiastes promises no such outcomes because nothing is guaranteed. The teacher says, yeah, doing this is good, but trying to figure out what the outcome will be, trying to figure out what it means is pointless. It's hevel. It's vapor. So like, for example, in today's reading, in verse 2, we heard this comparison. It's better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of everyone, and the living will lay it to heart. In other words, it's better to attend a funeral than a party. Why? I mean, we sit at a funeral, we think about life, don't we? We think about what life is all about, don't we? We think about our own life, we ponder, we become wise as we do so. And the reason for doing this isn't so that we'll earn a wealth or income or anything. The reason for doing this is because y'all gonna die anyway. I mean, that's the reason. That's the reason. This is the end of everyone. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are, you're going to die. It doesn't matter what power you have in this world, all are going to die. This is the only guarantee given in the book of Ecclesiastes, by the way. Wisdom gives life to the one who possesses it. Not wealth, not power, not prestige, not anything else, just regular old living. Just life. And then that beautiful summary at the end of the passage we heard today. In the day of prosperity, be joyful. And in the day of adversity, consider. God has made the one as well as the other, so that mortals may not find out anything that will come after them. In other words, if you're having a good day, have it. If you're having a good day, have it. Enjoy it. Be present in that moment because you don't know what's coming tomorrow. Be present right then, right there, in that little moment that's not so little. Enjoy the good days when they come because every moment can indeed be sacred. Every moment is filled with holy possibility. Towards the end of the movie Soul, Joe has gotten back into his own body. And he has, in fact, played that dream gig, that gig with Dorothea Williams that he just knows is going to make his life meaningful, that is going to bring him happiness. He just knows that having played this gig, he will now have acquired purpose for his life. And so there they are, standing on the sidewalk just outside of the door. And Joe asks Dorothea, so, what happens now? And she says, well, we come back tomorrow night and we do it again. And he replies to her, I have been waiting for this experience, my entire life, I just thought I would feel different. And she looks at him and she knows what's going on. So she tells them a story. So there was this fish. There was this fish. A younger fish swims up to an older fish. Says, hey, could you help me out? I'm looking for the ocean. And the older fish says, the ocean? You're swimming in it. It's all around you. To which the younger fish replies, no, this is just water. But I'm looking for the ocean. How often do we have this misconception that we can somehow acquire purpose in our lives? We are fooled by so many ways into thinking that we can acquire this meaning, and sometimes in the pursuit of this acquisition, we forget to live. We forget to live in each and every sacred moment of our lives because it's all hevel anyway. And so we look for happiness in regular old living. Now, because this movie has a pianist in it, I thought I would share a song. It's not a song from Soul, however. It is a song from another show. It's from a show called You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. And it is titled simply Happiness. So this, by Clark Genzer, the song Happiness. Happiness is 2 kinds of ice cream, finding your skate key, telling the time. Happiness is learning to whistle, tying your shoe for the very first time. Happiness is playing a drum in your own school band. And happiness is walking hand in hand. Happiness is 5 different crayons, knowing a secret, climbing a tree. Happiness is finding a nickel, catching a firefly, setting him free. Happiness is being alone every now and then. And happiness is coming home again. Happiness is having a sister, sharing a sandwich, getting along. Happiness is singing together when day is through. Happiness is those who sing with you. Happiness is morning and evening, daytime and nighttime too. For happiness